Today we have Kari on the show and I'm so excited. Hi, Kari. Welcome.
Hey, Beck. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're so welcome. We had a really cool pre-chat, so I'm excited to get into it. Before we do, I'll introduce you. Kari Assoignon, is that right? I've practiced, guys.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Is a certified trauma-informed dating and pleasure coach, breathwork and somatic healing facilitator. They're like all the things everyone needs in their life. She is also the visionary behind Conscious Dating, a 12-week one-on-one coaching container designed for women to help them navigate the dating world with self-love as their guide and a blend of embodiment, pleasure and breathwork practices. Such a beautiful way of saying get in your body, isn't it? I just love that. It's so important. So when we had our pre-chat, we spoke a lot about the stories that people make up or that have, I mean, maybe they've benefited them in some way, but the stories that we kind of carry around with us in life and how they can impact dating. And I would love to dive into that and chat to you about that. So, what is it about these stories that impact people and that kind of get in their way?
I think that's a multi-leveled question around that. But the main aspect, I guess, is when you're dating from self-love, working through and starting to change the narrative.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of every time, if you're going to be dating and if you're single for quite some time, you're definitely going to come across rejection or getting ghosted or, things just not working out. And so what stories are you telling yourself every time this happens, right? Are you questioning your self-worth? Are you putting it onto you? Or can you turn it back to keep coming back to love and being like, that person has their own issues with whatever. And I'm thankful I got to know them, but also better off with someone who can communicate better, right?
Yeah, that's so important. Hey, so it sounds like people can just add these stories on each time, they can almost build on each other, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many, right? And you got to think it can even go back as early from your childhood and be okay, well, what kind of relationship did your parents have, or were you raised by a single parent or a grandparent, or how are you raised? What kind of relationships are they? And so what stories do you already have around what a relationship is? Right?
That's so true.
That's a big piece of it too.
I remember saying to my husband, really before he became my husband, obviously, when I tell you this story, but I said to him, I don't believe in marriage because so many of my marriages in my family had ended in divorce. And I'd taken on this story of well, if you get married, you get divorced. And so that just, fed my experience until I looked at it and was that's strange. Why do I have that? And why, is that helping me or is it not? Yeah.
So what got you through that? What made you?
Yeah, good question. I think I just questioned it. I'm such a curious human. So I think I was just why do I have that? And is it worth me having that? Is that true? Will that actually, I have two stories to back that up. What about the rest of the world where marriages do work successfully and how do they work successfully and what does that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I think a big piece of that too is just having awareness as these stories come up, right? When you're in the situation being okay, is that actually true for me? Or is that something I learned from someone else? And then taking that moment to pause, have the awareness, and then being able to okay, what are my choices here? What do I want it to mean? And then kind of working through that aspect as well, right? Because they're going to keep coming up.
Yeah.
It's not something that will just go away, right? So it's just the initial step is just building the awareness in the body. Where am I feeling this? Where is this from? And how early on did I learn this?
Yeah. So how do people, if they're not aware, how do they bring it into their awareness? Because I'm sure many of us are running with these stories in the background, which are determining what we do in life. But how do we become aware of it?
Yeah, and I think everyone that's in the dating world right now, or I've gone through a breakup or anything along those lines, it's kind of like the negative self-talk, right? If something went wrong or the things that you keep replaying in your head. And so it's just being able to take some time to sit with yourself or just getting an outside perspective as well. I think that's where coaching really comes in handy is because it's someone completely unbiased that can ask you these more difficult questions because it's not like a friend would ask you, right? So what do you think of this? But so yeah, just getting out of your own way and just starting to notice patterns. And so when you are waiting anxiously for a text to hear back from someone, right? And you're staring at your phone and you're doing all these things, thinking about it, being like, okay, I realize I do this a lot. And every single time I'm interested in someone, how can I make this different? Or what does this mean to me? Like, what is it representing to you?
Yeah.
Is it something that you're not getting from somewhere else in your life?
Yeah. I love that. And that is a really cool example in terms of like that somatic stuff. Like, how does that feel in your body? Because anxiety, you can feel it, you can feel it being present in your body. And I think even if you have that low level anxiety all of the time, you can still feel when it kind of peaks and when it's more present. And so then it's so much easier. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about if you can become aware of, like, how does it benefit you to become aware of what it feels like in your body, do you think?
Oh, I think it's like the number one thing that helped me on my healing journey was just starting to have the awareness and feeling sensations in my body. Because before that, I was completely numbed out. Like, I didn't connect with any of that at all. So being able to connect to the sensations in your body really allows you to drop into what you're feeling and acknowledge it, right? Because a lot of times when we have anything that we don't like, we try to suppress. But if you actually sit with the feeling, like if you have anxiety, just sitting with it and being like, okay, what was I just doing that changed this? Right? And then it's just slowly bringing the awareness around. Like, the first step on everything is just the awareness around it. And then starting to ask yourself really simple questions that can be really deep though. Like, how often do I feel this? Am I doing the same things every time I'm feeling this? Because it's repetitive patterns as well that we need to break.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to I know for myself, I get anxious around health stuff. So if my little boy's sick, or I've got a 4-year-old, so if he's ever sick, I can feel my anxiety peaking. And it's only super recently that I've been able to have this perspective of not being in the anxiety, but having this view above it which has really benefited me to be okay, what's happening here? Why am I feeling so anxious? And really bringing myself to be present around he's actually fine. Yes, he's got a temperature, but he's fine. Look at how he's playing or interacting but it wasn't until I had that kind of bird's eye view of myself to understand it a bit better.
Yeah, there's one practice that I do that, and it's similar. So you're sitting with, if we're going with anxiety, say you're sitting with the anxiety, you're kind of feeling it in your body. And then you go from to the bird's eye view and see how that perspective changes for you.
Yep.
And then you try and drop in right into the anxiety and what it's actually there for as well, right? So if you go in as the anxiety and to see what it would have to say or what it's trying to, majority of the time when something's coming up like that, it's trying to protect you. There's normally a fear or something else around that. So when you drop right into it and kind of give it its own voice, the things that come up are mind-blowing that you would never think of. And you're oh, okay, well, I can handle that now, right? It's not so scary and doom and gloom.
Yes.
It's just a piece of you. So
yeah,
it's really just allowing yourself to soften into that, to be able to feel it. And a big piece of that I'm always talking around is feel safety in your body at the same time.
Yeah, that's really important. How are some other ways that people can cultivate that safety?
Safety is a daily practice. So it's really around, you had mentioned, kind of acknowledging where you're at. If you're feeling anxious and kind of sitting with that and welcoming it in, but also being okay, I'm safe here. And what does safety feel like in my body? Because everyone has a different felt sense of safety. And so you can feel safe in your environment, but what does it feel like in your body?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's a big difference. Yeah. A lot of my clients have felt safety in other people. And so that's what they're attracted to, is that safety when they don't feel it in themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. And being able to cultivate that, hey? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you said before. It's really sticking with me about softening into the anxiety or being with it, because it's almost the same as when we get triggered. We often, people go oh, I don't want that, get away. But that is where the work needs to be done. That's go into that. That's now when I get triggered, I'm woo, it's amazing. It's something that can be done, as opposed to I don't like it. if we can change our view around like that, or even the stories, like why we, instead of, I hear people say all the time, oh, when's it going to be my turn? Or like, you know, I'm sick of doing this same thing over and over again, but they're not going into it. They're avoiding it constantly. So it is going to keep coming up because it's so important to address them. Hey?
I know. And it sounds so cliche, but the only way out is through.
Yes.
Like if you really want to get there, you got to go in.
Yes.
You got to go inwards. You got to feel the things. And that's where I think coaching comes in so handy, because that's a supported, safe space that can guide you through that. But really, you're doing the work. They're just guiding you through.
Yes.
Right? And so I recommend to anyone that has those fears around leaning into those more difficult emotions or sensations or things they've been avoiding, get support. Right? There's lots of people out there that have been on the similar path that can guide you through what they've been through. So,
and just like you can be held then, like you can be held in it. And it's like there's actually like love when, that's so warped, but I love when clients cry or they're angry or they're, you know, because there's so much of society that says that you can't feel that way, or you shouldn't feel that way, or stop crying, or just be happy, or, you know, just ignore these things. And yet we need these emotions. You know, so I love when there's a space where someone feels safe enough to be able to do that with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so human. Like,
yes.
Why, like, I just think it's so great, especially from like a somatic embodiment practice kind of thing, right? Like you store all of your traumas in your body. And trauma doesn't have to be like big, crazy traumas. It can be all the little things that you just never allowed yourself to express. So it gets stored in your body. So when you allow movement, when you allow energy through, then you're releasing it. Right? And you got to think of like when a little kid is throwing a tantrum on the floor, but then they sleep like the best sleep of their life after that.
Yep.
You know, we don't get to do that as adults because we're told not to move, not to make, especially as women.
Yes.
More so even, I think, not to have any negative emotions, you know. I was sent to my room whenever I was upset, and then told when I can be nice and good, I can come back out and be with everyone.
Yes.
Right? So that's something I had to work through myself, is just being like, okay, I can express my emotions on every level and still be safe around people.
Yes. Yeah. I think like anger is a big one for that. It's like women get taught they can't be angry, and now men get taught that they can't be angry. Like no one can be angry. No one can be, but it's the anger's not the problem. I think we're missing.
I love a good rage ritual.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my favorite things is like a rage ritual.
Yeah.
Like if you're having like just a blah day and you just need to let it out, like put on like a grunge song and just like let it out, like punch some pillows, scream into a pillow, like just shake your body, like let that rage out, whatever you need to do. If you need to lay on your bed and like throw a tantrum like a 4-year-old. And I guarantee you by the time that song is over, it's gone. Like you'll move into different emotions, but it's just like, it's so cathartic to just release and learn that it's okay to release and that you can be safe to release, right? And then you can come back into regulation.
Yeah. You know what they have here? Well, not where I live, but in Sydney. They've got rooms where you can throw plates and smash plates, and they've got like axe throwing. And like, I just love, there's so many activities now which are like outside the box where you can just like, you know, go and smash a plate. And like all of my clients do it. So it feels so good to just like get it out. I've had people do it on dates as well. Just go and do it together. I love it.
I love that. Yeah, we have something similar here. They're called rage rooms, and you could just go like, but they have like all different types of like washing machines and like any, the whole room is just filled with stuff that you can hit. I know one of my good friends went and did it after her divorce, and she just like, and I'm good.
Yeah, I've let it all out. This is the thing, right? Though, isn't it? When we just like things can drag on for so long because we're avoiding. But if we just allow it to be there and like don't shame the emotion, we can make it out the other side much quicker.
Well, and they say too, like if you're feeling a really difficult emotion, that it only is going to last 2 minutes if you can actually sit with it. Like it doesn't last a crazy amount of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're sitting with something difficult, it feels like forever.
Yeah.
But then the whatever is underneath that actually comes up, right? Because it's never anger.
Yes.
It's usually like either frustration or something along those lines, but it's because you're not feeling heard, or like you're not feeling welcomed, or, you know, there's other feelings around there of not being loved in the way that you feel that you should be loved or respected.
Yeah. I want everyone to hear that. It's 2 minutes. 2 minutes, just put your time on and you'll get through it so that you know that you won't be there forever. Nothing lasts forever, right?
And for any emotion, like put on a song that matches your emotion and just move to it. Like go in a room, crank your tunes or put in your headphones and just let loose. And it's an absolute game changer. I do it every morning now. Like at first I was just like, oh, this feels so awkward. And now I'm just like, I'm always moving in that way and just closing my eyes and letting my body take over because it knows what it needs to do.
I love that.
That's the coolest part of it all. So
I love that. I did a breathwork and ecstatic dance thing the other night, and that was so cool because one, I've never done breathwork like that, so it felt phenomenal. But also just the dancing, just being able to like dance to music in a loud room because I don't often do that. I love it, but I don't do it a lot. I love music in my car and turning that up and singing at the top of my lungs, and but I don't often do it at home. So something I'll have to increase.
Yeah. Each morning, like put on one song to just start your day kind of thing. What kind of breath work did you do?
Oh, great question. It was a mix of a million different things, I believe. We did, I think, what did she call it? I don't know. I don't know anything technical, but I loved it. There was lots of I know there was lots of hand movements. There was lots of stomping. There was lots of, it was,
That's perfect.
It felt so good. And get this, I held my breath for 4 minutes. At the end of the thing, she said, they were doing this holding breath thing. And I went up to her then and I said, how long was that last one for? And she said, 4 minutes. And I almost fell over. I was like, 4 minutes? I held my breath for 4 minutes? And she's like, I was like, what? Did not even know that was possible.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, never done this
train
before.
up to that, right?
Yeah, hasn't it? It's just interesting when you don't know, I had no story around that, right? So, there was no, I couldn't do it. And also, I didn't know. I didn't know the time. If someone was saying to me, you've done 30 seconds, I would have created oh, no, it's too hard to do that. I can't go any further than that. I would have created something around that. But because I kind of went into it blindly, and I didn't have this story that it wasn't possible, I just did it, right? It's just
so empowering, just to know, and I didn't have a story. Yeah. And that's really all that it has to be to hold. It's so simple. That's the
simple
crazy part of it all is it's not easy. It's really difficult work. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll do is to go on a deep healing journey. But it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. So I know before we jumped on, you mentioned that you help people get from the breakup into the dating. What things have you found to be most beneficial in the work that you do to move them to the space where they're ready to date? And this is a two-part question, so hold it all in your head or ask me again. Why is that so important to do that before you jump back into dating? Because I know sorry that I'm talking now that I've asked you a question. I know here what quite often happens is people go, I'm ready, jump on the app, I've set up their profile, and they think that's the most important step as opposed to the stuff prior to getting ready. Yeah, go for it.
So I'll actually answer that backwards.
Oh, great.
In regards to what I do to get people there, the reason it's so important is so they don't keep attracting the same type of people that they ultimately end up getting hurt with. So what I do is we get a lot of clarity around what they actually want and where they're at and what they're currently attracting and why, right? And it's really a lot of inner child work, removing old baggage, but just even acknowledging it's there first and then working through that, right? So there's a lot of, especially if you've been dating multiple people, you're carrying a little bit of that baggage into the next relationship. So you're putting things onto this new person that they have no idea about.
Yeah.
Right. So it's getting the clarity around that. It's clearing out all of that space to allow for you to approach it. And that's why I call it conscious dating in a more conscious way, right? So you have the awareness around what you're bringing to the relationship, right? What are you offering? What are you expecting in return? Where are your boundaries? How are you going to communicate? How are you taught to communicate, right? What's the gap there and how can we bridge that? What kind of conditioning or what kind of beliefs do you have around relationships, right? Versus what you want and how do you get there? Because I see a lot of people, and this goes for both sexes, they have this crazy scroll list of this is everything I want, right? And you're like, okay, well, how do you compare to match that? Right? As well. So,
yeah.
But the steps around it are really clarity, the awareness, and then really cleaning out all of the other emotions. Because if they're still, especially if they're coming out of heartbreak, like I really encourage some time to work on themselves before they jump into something new. Because it's so easy to go to the next and the next, right?
Yes.
But it's making that time and commitment to yourself that makes such a difference.
Yeah. It's just another form of avoidance, isn't it? To just jump from one to another to another. Like, no time to address. Let's just, find
and I
that
totally get why
happiness
people do it. Like at the core of every human being, we just want to be loved.
Yeah.
Right? We just want to be valued for who we are. So I totally understand it. And we're never taught. Like in school at any age, we're never taught how to deal with our emotions, deal in relationships, communicate better. Like I feel like that's something we need to be taught, because otherwise you only get to learn as far as what your circle, like the people you're involved in, can teach you.
Yeah. And it's like, and I know that this is my line of work, so maybe I'm biased, but I feel like it's so much more important than maths or science. So like, imagine if we had like these solid humans walking around who knew how to communicate with each other and know how to handle conflict. Like that would change everything. That would change your workforce, your productivity, the way that you then you can probably learn maths, like learn how to communicate first.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
The way that you show up in everything.
Yeah. Like we all have relationships. Like regardless of whether you're in an intimate relationship or not, there's relationships everywhere. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And they always say like you are like the 5 top people that you hang around with. And when you look around and you're like, okay, well, I don't really want to be that. But then like, how do you get to where you want to be? Right.
Yeah.
It's all, again, those stories that you're telling stuff. Okay. Well, that's like a lot of the comments I get when because I've up-leveled, I've done so much work, right? And it's like, oh, must be nice. And I was like, yeah, it is. But it wasn't, it wasn't easy. It's great now because I have the awareness and I can share it with others. And I love that. But nothing about this was an easy process. So.
Yeah, I get that. I get that with my husband. Oh, you're so lucky. Well, I don't know. Like, this took a lot of work. It's not like magically we woke up and we're, happy in love every day. Like we have to choose each other and do the work all the time. Like, it's definitely not easy.
It doesn't get easier when you're in a relationship.
No. So, I hope everybody hears that. I hope everybody hears that.
So like if you're dating and they aren't meeting your needs while you're dating, it's not going to get better over time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's another thing that a lot of my clients get caught up in is the potential of someone. And it's like, yeah, they have potential, but to what end?
Yeah.
Like that's great. Every person has potential.
Yes.
But if they're not putting action to any of the things, then at what point do you say, okay, enough's enough and move on?
Yeah. Why is that so? I said that a lot too. Like in your opinion, why is that so dangerous to love on that potential?
Because I think just people are willing to overlook so many things just to be in a relationship. I really feel like they're willing to overlook just being in love with their potential or the red flags or all these things, right? And not the actual, like, what's real. And so there's a lot of wasted time and heartache and energy that goes into that, only to end up at the same place 6 months down the road.
Yeah.
And realizing, so it's being able to have those like difficult conversations with yourself even and getting the clarity around what you want before you jump into that. So then when you're in, dating for a few months and you're like, okay, well, this isn't exactly kind of what I wanted or the route I'm willing to take. You can then have that conversation and then take it from there, right? Make your decisions off that. But you already have that and you've already proven to yourself that you know what you do want. So
totally. And that you can express that, right? Like that you can put those boundaries in place. Like I always say to my clients, it's like never, ever too early to put a boundary in place because it's how that person responds to the boundary that is going to give you so much information as to who they are and whether they're right for you or not. But yet we're so scared. I see people are so scared of putting in place because they don't want to lose the person. I'm like, but if you lose them, this is a good thing. They weren't meant to be for you and you found out early on.
Well, and I kind of believe too, like boundaries are more for you than the other person.
Yes.
Like people always think, well, they're offending the other person. I was like, this is for you. This is for you to know your limits and what you're willing to take or not take.
Yep.
So think of it from that perspective and it kind of changes on what you're willing to set, right?
Yes, if you're willing to put yourself first or if you value yourself, right? Which is why this work before is so important. Yeah.
Well, and boundaries roll, like it all rolls together, right? It's the confidence, it's the boundaries, it's the clarity over what you want. Like it's all part and parcel of doing the work before you jump into the next relationship.
Yeah.
And then when you've done that work as well, then you can jump into, or not jump into, but you can start dating other people that have also done the work.
Yes.
Right? So you're both showing up differently and more present for yourselves and for each other, and you can have those conversations. Because I guarantee you, if you're doing the work and you're trying to heal and get rid of all your past stuff, you're not going to fall for the people that aren't. Like, you just see through it after a while and you're just like, yeah, cool, that's you, but I'm not interested, right?
Yeah. It's so cool. I love when I see that in clients, when like, because I'm working with them when they're dating and we're doing this work while they're dating. So like quite often they're like, they start attracting these guys and they might even get into a relationship with them, and then they do the work a little bit more, and then it's so clear that in their mind they're like, like it's just so clear. No, that's not for me, you know. And there isn't any attachment to it or even emotions around it, because it's just like, it's just so black and white at that point. Yeah.
I love it. It's simple at that point. And it's like, yeah, cool. Like, no hard feelings, like just not my thing.
Yes.
And when you leave that space open, then you allow other people to fill it too, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love that. I also love when you were talking about like people being those mirrors of us, and like something that was coming out to me, because I hear from women all the time, you know, I want a man that's emotionally available, and yet when we do the work, they're quite often hesitant to be okay with their own emotions. So like, I don't know if often people see the link between like, yes, you want him to be emotionally available, but are you emotionally available for yourself? Like, are you allowing those things in? Like, talk to me about like that, not just with that, but mirrors, how they show up, and how I suppose we can use dating to start to recognize maybe what the work that we need to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. And I think another term for mirrors kind of that I use is the word trigger, right? Because a lot of people, once they start dating and they're like, oh, that person triggered me, I need them to not do A, B, or C.
Yeah.
And I kind of flip the switch on that. I'm like, okay, well, it's not on them to resolve your triggers. It's on you. Right. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, I just, this happened before in my past, and so I don't want my next relationship to be able to do that. I'm like, or we can get to the root cause of that, so you're no longer triggered by that, or you can at least have the awareness of it and be able to communicate that to your partner. Hey, I'm feeling triggered because of this. This is what occurred, and here's what I'd like to change going forward, right? But it's all around, like, it's really around learning how to have those difficult conversations, but also how, when you're getting triggered or you have those moments of like someone mirroring something back to you that you don't like, to be able to pause and like sit with yourself first in that. And so even if you're in a relationship, you still have to do your own work. And I think that's the most beautiful relationships that I witness, is two people that are willing to show up for themselves, committed to each other.
Yep.
Or however many. It could be polyamorous as well. It's not
Yeah.
limited to two, but you know what I mean? Like, it's when people really do the work for themselves. And then, like, I know that I trigger my partner with certain things because he's communicated that to me.
Yep.
Right. And so I have that awareness, but again, it's not my responsibility for his triggers.
Yeah. I love that. That's something in my brain where I was, no, you did. I just heard, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to go there. And then it left my brain. And I just love it so much because, relationships, it's like, that's really important to be able to do that work in a relationship. This is what I was thinking about. When you get in a relationship and you get triggered, and quite often that's when people start to sabotage it or run away or end it, or, because it's uncomfortable. And so they're like, oh, this is not what I like. It's definitely, I knew I was right. That's it. The story, like that, I knew that was right. That story told me that I was right. And this has reinforced it. So I've got the proof now, they've triggered me and I need to kind of get out of here. Yeah. It's really interesting, and why you need to be aware, right? Why you need to be aware that you're of the stories and stuff that you carry, and how you might. I was working with a client last night and she's like, I'm aware that when we have our first conflict, that might be when I want to run. Like, even having the awareness that like that could happen So I was like, cool, talk to your partner about it. Like, talk to the
Yeah.
partner about the potential that could happen, and this is what it could look like, and this is the kind of support you need. Like, have the conversation, make a game plan before it happens, you know. But to get there, she had to be aware. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was a runner for sure. For sure. Before I met this partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, we're going to argue. Okay. Then I guess we're done. Like, I didn't have that sense of safety around having a disagreement in a relationship, right? I always took every argument as okay, we need to break up because we're not compatible. Right. And so it wasn't until I did my work and then I met my partner and we were able to communicate. And he was the one who taught me how to communicate, how to hold space, how to have those difficult conversations, because I was never taught that growing up.
Yeah.
So that's a big piece of it too, right? It's having that awareness around that and then surrounding yourself with people that can help guide you through that as well. Because I really am against the phase of like, you have to learn to love yourself 100% before you can get in a relationship.
Oh, me too.
I disagree with that. The most growth you'll do is when you're surrounded by people who love you and support you and call you out.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like, I want us all to move on from this idea that we need to be like fully healed or like, you know, like the work begins in relation with others. Like, that's how you know. Otherwise, you're working in this like solo container. And yes, you can get feedback from a coach and yes, there's work you can definitely do to be in a place where you feel like you're in a space to start dating again. However, it's not perfect. You're going to then come across stuff that does trigger you and that does bring up stuff for you. And that is the perfect opportunity to work through it. And you don't find that alone.
But you're never really alone. Like, anything you're learning in a relationship or any of your inner work, it expands out to where you work, your friendships, your family. Like, it kind of just spreads out on all levels, right? Because your boundaries change, the way you speak changes, the way you present yourself changes.
Yes.
Like, it's a whole personal growth journey, and everybody that's in your life kind of goes on that with you to a certain extent, right? If they want to stay in your life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's so important. What about, like, you just made me think of, you know, what happens sometimes when people do the work is that they lose other relationships in their life that are maybe not comfortable with them growing, or that, you know, they're turning into a new version. They don't like that. Like, how do people handle that?
I think it's a really tough situation. Like, it's sad in a way because you really want the people that are in your life to think that they'll always be in your life, but you can outgrow relationships, right? If other people aren't willing to grow and change with you, and that's okay. Like, that's the human aspect of it. Like, you're going to grow and change, and these people, like, they don't have to be bad people for it to not work out. Right. And it goes the same with relationships. Like, when you're dating, like, the person doesn't have to be a bad person for you just to not be compatible.
Yeah.
And same with friendships. You can outgrow friendships. So I just think that's something to just have an awareness of, but you really have to just start. And I think it happens a bit naturally. Like, you just slowly start distancing yourself, because you find as you're on this process or this journey that, like, the things that excite you and light you up, you're kind of drawn towards, and the things that are just like draining your energy. And sometimes these are relationships. You notice that in your body, right? Because you have a lot more awareness around that. And so if you're hanging around people and you're just like, afterwards, you're just like, ugh, you know, I just feel drained from being around them for that long, then you just slowly kind of distance yourself over time. So
again,
I really
like,
think it
that
happens
awareness,
over time, but
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's so funny when
I think a big piece.
Yeah, keep going.
No, go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when I first started recording this podcast and I did all these solo episodes, it felt like I was like, give a lesson, and every lesson was like self-awareness, self-awareness, self-awareness. But it's so important.
No, there's so many times you're like, I feel like I'm on repeat, but I can't. Like, you just want to like nail it home, because everything begins with you. Like, it begins and ends with you.
Yes.
At the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that the other piece of it too is, like, as you're changing relationships or, you know, removing people from your life, that definitely opens up space for other people.
Yes.
But there's also a grieving process, because you're letting go of a piece of you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something that I want my clients and everyone to be aware of, is like, you need to take the time to grieve older versions of you, to be able to say goodbye, to thank them for what they did, and to not wrap it up in like shame or embarrassment of how they reacted, because they did the best they could with what they had, with what they knew, right? And now that you have more knowledge and awareness, you'll do better.
Yeah.
So
I think that is
a constant change. Yeah.
That's just so, so important. It's my number one mantra, and I know not everyone agrees with me, but I honestly believe that everyone is doing the best they can in every given moment. And that can look different from moment to moment to moment, because you're a different human every moment, you know? So even if you have more information, you still might not have the capacity to do different, or, you know, but you're still doing your best. And if you can have that, particularly towards yourself, you know, and others would be amazing, but if you can have that towards yourself, you know, that, you know, you can allow yourself to just be you and know that you're doing okay and you're doing your best. Yeah.
And speak kindly to yourself. Like,
yes.
Have you seen that video of the lady who's like, just speak to yourself in the mirror the way you would to like your puppy dog, and you're just like, oh, what a cute little tush you have.
Oh, no.
Have you seen
That's
that?
amazing. No.
I'll have to share that video sometime. But yeah, that's her like speak to yourself in the mirror the way you would to like the dog that you love, and just.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Find it. We'll put it in the show notes. It's so amazing.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's really true. It's interesting. In Australia, we're really good at this. The women really good at talking badly about ourselves, and we do it in a really joking way. So we're like, "You're an idiot," like you're so dumb, like literally like all the time. I even found myself doing the other day. I was like, "You idiot," and I was like, "Oh, what am I doing? Why are you calling yourself an idiot?" You know, like it's really, really common, and it's really common here to like chop other women down. You know, you're doing good, let's cut another woman down, because it's just not helping the cause. Yeah,
and that was one of the things I had to heal massively, was my sisterhood wounding. Because even for no reason, I would just have these women that were in competition with me, and I'd be like, what did I, you know, it would completely catch me off guard. And then the friendships you have are just, at least for me, because I wasn't being a good friend, so I wasn't attracting good friends, right? So there was the constant hurt around that as well. So competition amongst women is very common, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah, it totally doesn't have to be.
Once you can love yourself, you can love others and support them, right?
Yeah.
Like I have so many amazing girlfriends now that I just like, I am their biggest cheerleader on so many levels.
Yeah,
because,
me too.
Like, I'm just proud to be around them.
Yeah. And it's cool to watch, hey? Like, and just know, like, thankfully I stepped into business when I never had this old mindset, which I feel like is being phased out. It's still a little bit present, but I feel like it's being phased out, is in like, you know, let's collaborate, not compete, because there's enough humans in the world. And, you know, like I always say to people, if I have a client and say they listen to this podcast and they're like, oh, I loved Kari, I want to go work with her. Great, go do it. Because if that's what's going to be best for your success, that's what I want. I don't care about you being my client, or like, you know, I want you to be the best version of you. And if that means that you go work with someone else, amazing. You know, like each individual, I am not the guru. You know, everyone knows what they need from themselves. Like, it's not up to me to tell them. That's up to them to tell them that. So, yeah, I just think that that's so important, to just have those people in your life that you proud of and that you like love celebrating, and they love celebrating you, and it's just amazing. And they'll call you out on your shit. That's so important.
That's literally, so in my coaching program, I say, like, I want to be the big sister, because my goal is to be supportive and to help you through this process the way I didn't have someone there when I went through it, right? So I really want to do that. But I'm also going to call you out on your shit the way a sister would, right? Like, no one is more harsh or honest to someone than between sisters.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Made me think about it. But also celebrating you that you have that like aspect as you're going through this business, right? Yes. And I feel the same way. Like, if a client comes to me and they're not a good fit, I have so many that I would refer them to, being like, okay, what are you looking for, right? And then I just pass them along as well, because the world needs to heal.
Yes.
That's ultimately the end goal, right? It's not about me or you. It's let's heal the world, heal people.
Heal the world. Right? Michael Jackson came into my head. He's here, people.
I love that. So like, spread it around, whatever it is. Spread the love, man, on every level.
So good. Oh my gosh, this has been so good. Is there any other, I'm sure there is, but is there any other words of wisdom that you want to drop in here before we wrap up?
No, actually, if anybody's interested in more embodiment or somatic type stuff, I do have a guided practice that is literally called Opening Your Heart for Love. And that can just be found on my website. It's free for whoever just wants a little heart opening practice. And it's specifically for people in dating or relationships, right?
Oh, I love that.
And that's available on my website, and it's exes-os-ohs.ca. and then / open your heart. So
perfect. That will be in the show notes too. And where else can people find you and work with you and be in your orbit?
Yeah, so it's my website, like I just said. Everything's there for my conscious dating and pleasure as well. I do female sexuality and conscious dating. And then my socials are just my name at Kari Assoignon.
Assoignon, there it is, guys. Such a beautiful name.
Assoignon.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful talking to you and getting to hear. I just think you're doing such an amazing job with women, and it is healing the world. And can we please fade off into the song? That's so cool. It's going to be in everyone's ears for their whole day now. They're going to go in and put it on the radio.
Awesome.
No, thank you so much for being here. Thank
you too, Beck, and to all your amazing listeners for this. It's just an incredible opportunity to connect. So
you're so welcome. Bye, Kari.
Awesome.